Hi, Jim. Could you tell us a little about the PR landscape in Mexico?
The public relations industry in Mexico has gone through quite a aggressive transition over the last decade, and I think there's two reasons why this has occurred. The first is economic. Mexico has had a sustained period of economic growth resulting from NAFTA and other trade agreements. It has a very large and growing middle-class population, and that in turn is resulting in multinational companies and Mexican companies having to invest a lot more in building their brands, in doing advertising, in doing communications, doing CSR programs. And that will continue, I think, for some period of time as the Mexico economy continues to expand and the middle-class population continues to get to be larger. The second trend is a political trend. Mexico has gone through a transition from a one-party political system for most of the 20th century to now a very dynamic multi-party political system. That has changed the politics of the country, but it's also changed the way the government and the citizenry and NGOs and industry all communicate with each other. So we've seen a tremendous explosion of public affairs, of government relations, communications in areas such as healthcare and education, and of course you're seeing the digital revolution now come to Mexico just as it has to the US and to other markets.
Mexico is hosting the UN climate change talks in November. Could you tell us a little about their role and the prospects for an agreement this year?
This is probably going to be the most important event that takes place in Mexico in 2010. Mexico will be the host and venue of the 16th Committee of the Parties of the UN climate talks. This was the agreement that was not reached in Copenhagen. We'll try again with the world community coming together for 2 weeks in late November and early December. Mexico is the venue, the host venue, but they'll play a convening role as a leading country in the developing world to try to bring countries together towards an agreement, to try to get the US and China and India and other countries to be able to have a global binding treaty on climate change. Because there wasn't an agreement in Copenhagen last December, the stakes are much higher for an agreement this year in Mexico, and you will see the Mexican government and Mexican NGOs and the private sector come together and really try to rally the world community to reach an agreement in Mexico in December.
How is Mexico's economy rebounding from the global recession this year, and what do you think foreign investors should be looking for?
Mexico is looking for 2010 to be a rebound year in its economic development and growth. The Mexican economy is very much tied to North America, to Canada and the US as a result of the NAFTA agreement. When the US had a recession in 2009, that was really impacted in Mexico. So now that the US is rebounding, the hope and expectation is that Mexico will also pick up this year. Foreign investors will look again at Mexico as a place of great opportunity, particularly in knowledge-based economic sectors, healthcare, education, infrastructure, IT. Some of those areas, particularly around Mexico City, have great opportunity. Growth should be in the 2 or 3% range. Inflation is under control. The government policy is pretty much set for the short-term period. And it will be, along with the US, a period of economic rebound. The tourism sector should rebound. Last year it was impacted by the H1N1 virus. That situation has passed. And those areas of the country that are very heavily dependent on tourism as the economic driver will look for North American visitors to return this year.
Jim, what else is happening in Mexico this year that you think would be of interest to international audiences?
Well, this is going to be a very festive and celebratory year for Mexican history. There are 2 important milestone anniversaries in 2010. The first is in September, which is the bicentennial of Mexico's independence from Spain. And every part of Mexico has been planning for 4 or 5 years for events tied to the bicentennial. There will be festivals, there will be celebrations. There's a number of new archaeological sites that will be open to the public for the first time. I think there's 30 museums across the country that are being renovated. And there will just be several months of getting ready for what will be in a tremendous party and a tremendous time of Mexico, both looking back at its history, but also looking ahead to its role on the global stage in the 21st century. The second anniversary takes place in November, and it will be the 100th anniversary of the start of the Mexican Revolution. So again, another milestone event. And what you'll see in Mexico is the period between September and November being one long period of cultural activities, performances, art exhibitions, outdoor activities and rallies taking place all over the country. There's a bicentennial flame that will travel to all the states, and on the day of the anniversary end up at the Zocalo Square in Mexico City, which will be packed with probably a couple 100,000 people celebrating. So it'll be a good time for visitors who are interested in Mexican culture and Mexican art to consider going to Mexico and participating in some of the activities.
What areas of the industry are on the rise right now?
I think what you're seeing a lot is corporations engaged in CSR programs, so they can better interact with their customers, their employees, with NGO groups, with the government, and of course with media. You're seeing an explosion of digital communications. Everybody's on Facebook, everybody's Twittering. Internet access and Wi-Fi access is just expanding to all regions of the country, and that's helping spur the digital communications. And you're also seeing in some boutique areas, some specialized areas, healthcare, education, IT, tremendous opportunities for growth in the communications industry.
What does the future hold for the Mexican PR industry?
I think it's an optimistic future because I see two trends continuing for the foreseeable future. One is sustainable economic growth. As that happens, there's a larger middle-class population that's emerging, and that is spurring the need for corporations, for government, for the NGO community to be communicating and building stakeholders. The second trend is a continuation of democratization in Mexico with a diverse multi-party political system, with very competitive campaigns, a very, very competitive media environment, and all of that will spur continued growth, not only by leading Mexican firms, but by multinational PR firms that have a presence in the Mexican market. So it's a very optimistic future.